Last corrections of 2021. Welcome, everybody. So excited to jump right into it. I referred to Philadelphia cream cheese as Philly's Best. Philly's Best is a cheesesteak restaurant. And I realized my error when someone from Philadelphia threw a battery at me. Also known as a Philadelphia how do you do. We talked about the anime Sailor Moon as if it was a current show. We were aware that we were probably wrong about that, and someone did write and say the final episode of Sailor Moon was February 8th, 1997. And I would just say to that person, the next time you give that information to someone, just the year. You know, based on their reaction, I think that'll let you know if they want the month and day. Oh, so this was interesting. We did a day drinking with Will Forte. I highly recommend you watch it. It was great. And we showed Edvard Munch's The Scream. And Will was doing voices of the paintings, and he, as you would expect, screamed. And someone said, you know, that's not, the person in this painting is not screaming. They're reacting to a scream, which I didn't know. And I guess Edvard Munch only saw, I mean, imagine if you were there and you missed the scream. You know, you hear a scream and then you run over and you're like, I heard, could you do it again? I'd love to paint it. And, I'm not gonna do it again. I was like, yeah, but I'm a painter and I feel like that's what people are gonna wanna see. You said you could paint someone reacting to it. But this is also fascinating because we also showed the Mona Lisa, and I was told this is actually a woman looking at a woman named Mona Lisa. And according to Michelangelo, he wanted to paint, what he wanted to do was paint a woman who was friends with a woman named Mona Lisa. And Mona Lisa's always late. And so this woman's always waiting for her. And then one day, and you know when you have a friend who's always late and you're just waiting and you know they're gonna be full of excuses. And so Mona Lisa basically sees her and does that does that, and then sort of that thing where you like speed up, jog a little bit, like you feel, oh, I'm gonna try to close the gap of how late I am. And then slipped and just ate it. And so that's the little smile. Is like if your friend was super late and then fell really hard. So this woman's name is Debbie Schwartz. I often say when I learn something, I say, oh, this is interesting, and someone told me, you shouldn't say that because it's not conclusive. You should say, I find this interesting. But the problem with that is I don't. I mispronounced target audience and said target audience. But that is on purpose. Carol Burnett would always do this to signal to her grandmother. It was like every now and then I will say word pirate style for the sea captain. Now, I will say with target audience, I just should have said target audience. I feel like to go target audience was it was a stretch. What did I get wrong here? Okay, I said we made a joke about Don Jr. being in the Fellowship of the Rings. My bad. It's Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, which I can't believe I forgot because it just rolls off the tongue. We're gonna start calling this Late Night with Seth Meyers a late night show. I talked about my beautiful baby girl, and I had forgotten to mention that her middle name is Ruth, after my wife's grandmother, and her first name is Adelaide. And like 4 of you, after I said her name was Adelaide Ruth Myers, said, oh, so her initials are ARM? like it was a burn. Like that she's gonna be in school one day and a mean kid's gonna go, "What's up, arm?" What? Sorry, what did you say? Arm. That's your name, isn't it? Addie Ruth Meyer's Arm? Yeah, I guess so. I'm sorry. What's your point? I thought you'd be with Leslie Garrison. What are you talking about? Leslie, Erica, Garrison, Leg? Thought you guys would be hanging out. Bye. We made a Clippy joke and said this is a joke from 1995. Clippy was actually introduced in 1997 to soften the blow after Sailor Moon had been canceled. We mentioned House, and again, at this point, people who watch the show are basically watching it for the impressions. And we mentioned Hugh Laurie's House, and people were so bummed I didn't do it. It's tricky. It's tricky to do British people who do, because I can do Hugh Laurie, but then you can't just do the voice he does his House. You got to go in his mind as a British person and switch it over. I think it's this. So Hugh Grant, because Hugh Grant is frankly, but then it's exhausting. But this would be Hugh Grant as an American. All right, so remember, here's British. It's like, okay. Welcome to Late Night. So I'm so bummed because, all right, so Matthew McConaughey was on the show, and I'm just bummed because, it's incumbent upon me as a talk show host to know I have a funny thing to tell a guest. And the funny thing I would have told Matthew McConaughey is the other day, my son Axel we're getting him dressed for school, and all of a sudden I look at him and I realize, oh, I know exactly who you look like. You look like a character in a movie, and that movie is Dazed and Confused, and Axel, you look like Wooderson. And if Peter Billingsley's ever on the show, I'm going to tell him, my son looks like Ralphie from A Christmas Story. We kind of talked about how this might be hey, it's the end of the year correction spectacular. But I got to be honest, it was too much work. I do this alone, and I have too much going on, and it was too much work. I also came up with the idea too late. But now, the reality is, I think March 1st is the year anniversary of corrections. So I'm basically, this is a pre-spectacular. We're just going to move the date. And I think I will get a team, obviously. I think NBC will obviously pay for a team. But it was fun, and I want to thank, because I asked you to send in your favorite things that were #BestOf. And this was my favorite, is someone said, my favorite correction was October 25th, when Seth said, all right, so here's what I said. I made a mistake doing a mimed phone call, and I said that really bums me out because I feel like as far as phone call comedy, one-sided phone call comedy, I'm the new Bob Newhart, the Bob Newhart, if you will. And this person's favorite moment was when I made that joke, and a guy audibly irritated said, "Oh my God." Let's see if you can hear it. When it comes to doing one-sided phone call comedy, I am the new Bob Newhart. The Bob Newhart, if you will. Bays. Let's isolate it. That you, Bays. I need your support. Because Bays comes up with terrible jokes all the time. All the time, and I don't tell him to save him the embarrassment. Like, for example, another correction I got is instead of consolation prize, I accidentally said constellation prize. And Bays said, you should go out and say, it's okay when you say constellation prize, because you're a star. Some other things people liked, and again, when we get to the spectacular March 1st, obviously we'll tick all these boxes. Everybody liked the Pixar movie that we talked about. If you guys don't remember, the Pixar movie is about chickens that go undercover in Germany during World War II as eggs and then hatch to help other farm animals, resistance farm animals, escape. And Pixar, very excited, they gave us a new title for it, Coca-Cola Duty. People love the graphics department. They love that we have a graphics team that makes mistakes and loves when they get punished for those mistakes because they all have a humiliation fetish. And I actually went down and was like, well, congratulations, you made best of corrections. And they were so bummed. And I was like, what's wrong? And they're like, wasn't there a worst of? I was like, fine, you're worst of. And they're like, oh, no. And they do. The graphics department, every single week, we do a different mug, and they find out in the morning. I'm like, hey, can you make something for me? And there's this one. And I do think that we've joked about the fact that there's no correction merch. I feel like that's the mug, right? Like, and so I set up a meeting with NBC to go in and basically, raise some hell and be like, hey, it's time, for corrections merch. At which point, I'm assuming they're going to do that thing where they're like, yeah, absolutely, to cover for the fact they don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, yes. And but the important thing is when we sell these, every dollar we raise, which I think is really cool, is going to go to me. I think maybe we'll have guests when we do the spectacular. We'll get Patty Lyons here, our knitting friend. Duff Warrior. Werner Herzog, maybe. I mean, they could send in video messages. Maybe we'll find a sociopath that says Lego bricks. We've talked about this before. People complain, hey, if it's not on TV, why are there bleeps on the YouTube video? YouTube does that. YouTube bleeps it. That's not our fault. More troubling to me, someone pointed out, sometimes YouTube, the closed captioning, which is very valuable, and it means the world to us, they closed caption it. But sometimes they put parentheses laughter. Sometimes they put parentheses light laughter. It's not for you to decide. Cicada Cicada. I mean, that's really the goal. I think March 1st might be too soon for Cicada Cicada, but got to write some songs for Cicada Cicada. I mean, with the cast lockdown, they've all committed for the next year. But, I want to write a song about, I think a beautiful song would be the cicada finding out that they only have 4 weeks to live. I think a beautiful song for Miss Christine Baranski would be how 4 weeks in New York City is a lifetime anywhere else. I think that's really beautiful. And then I have a scene where the cockroach, and this is going to be a very topical show. It's going to be very tied into the world we're living in now. The Mets-loving cockroach will come in, and there'll be a scene that starts where he's like, I got bad news. I just came back from the doctor, and I tested positive. And they say, oh no, for coronavirus? And he'll say, no, for the Mets! The doc says it's as bad as it gets. Fever, bad cough, and the sweats. I said, is there a cure? He said, sure. I take a hammer and I hit you on the head until you forget. I'd like to let you guys behind the curtain on corrections a little bit, which is we now have 3 kids, and the 3-month-old has a cough. And it's just kids getting sick is awful. And especially, in this time we're living in, everything, you just worry about what it is. And, for my wife, she's got this 3-month-old that has this cough. And, our boys, they're 3 and 5. And no matter how much you try to tell them, it's a really stressful morning, they don't understand. They're loving and they're sweet, but they don't understand. And they're just going to run around and be themselves. So the only person in my wife's life who lives with her who could understand and behave differently is me. And yet this morning, while this is all happening, I was writing down lyrics of things that rhymed with the Mets. And singing to myself, Bernie gets. And I feel terrible, you know, but then she comes over, she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm writing lyrics for a Broadway musical. And she was like, you can't do this right now. And I was like, do you think Sondheim's wife ever said that to him? And she was like, Sondheim never had a wife. And I said, exactly. All right, so like I said, you know, I blew it in that I promised a spectacular that didn't happen, and I do want to give you a treat, though. One thing that people always ask about with this show is, hey, how come we never see Mikey the Shoe? Like, people want to see him, and he doesn't want to be seen, but it's, I don't know, maybe consider it a Christmas gift. So anyway, for everybody home who's never seen him, do please enjoy Mikey the Shoe.
Oh, you don't never put Mikey the Shoe's face on camera.
Why?
Because I got people who are looking for me.
And I'm sorry, we have to pay you guys overtime for that? Lucky I got that mug money about to roll in. See me in 2 weeks. Happy holidays, everybody.